In the news this week, Scott Morrison crowned as Australia's new Prime Minister, but can he appeal to young voters?
In other stories, our co-workers continue their strike as they fight for job security.
A report shows WA youths are not getting enough leave-in care support despite eligibility.
And bye-bye Subi, WAFL's grand final to be hosted at the Optus Stadium.
This is the Evening News with Ivan Leung and Danielle Staniskov.
Good evening. After a week filled with political unrest, Scott Morrison broke the coup by winning the Libspill and become Australia's 30th Prime Minister. The state of Australian politics is worrying for our community, with many unhappy with the results either way. Taylor Hanna begins our coverage.
A 45-40 spill vote saw many still offering support for Turnbull, but it was inevitably the end of his three-year govern. Scott Morrison defeated Peter Dutton in another close vote to become PM, with Josh Frydenberg being appointed Deputy Leader from an overwhelming absolute majority.
There's been a lot of talk this week about whose side people are on in this building. And what Josh and I are here to tell you, as the new generation of Liberal leadership, is we're on your side.
With Australia now on its 7th Prime Minister in 10 years, there are talks the Liberal Party has done too much damage during this leadership spill to recover a win in the upcoming federal election. Sally Thompson, local activist, is appalled at the result but hopes it will see less far-right members in the cabinet.
You know, some of the voting patterns are going to change across Australia and that the old white men won't have it quite so much their way.
I think he's taken the poison chalice, he's taken it like a man. Best of luck to it.
Best of a bad bunch. I was just watching with a bag of popcorn. I didn't have a dog in that fight.
While the leadership change has been swift and unsparing, the challenge for Scott Morrison will be reuniting the Liberal Party successfully under contesting and opposing eyes. Taylor Hanna, WAMN News.
Experts say Scott Morrison's immediate challenge as Prime Minister is to reunite the Liberal Party and prepare for the next election. So, does Mr Morrison have what it takes to attract young voter support? Nelson Liu speaks with political expert Dr Ian Cook for an insight.
How will young voters be affected by this new leadership?
Well, I mean, I think that to some extent, if any of the candidates were likely to take young voters' interests into account, I think Scott Morrison is probably the one most likely to do so. You know, Peter Dutton comes from a much more older generation in the context of the sort of politics he does, very much a protege of Tony Abbott's, and so he carries that sort of older style politics, which I don't think really works that well for younger people.
Will young voters find it easier to appeal to him as PM to deal with issues that affect them?
Well, I think that not only his sort of experience as Treasurer, but he's also had experience in sort of social services ministry. So I guess we've got to hope he has a greater feel for young Australians and their needs. I'm not sure he showed it absolutely as Treasurer. So I think they've got some, he has got some making up to do to younger voters and younger Australians in terms of looking after their interests.
Peter Dutton claimed that he was the best chance of holding Bill Shorten and Labor off going into the next election. Is Scott Morrison now the Liberals' best chance of keeping power and boosting the country?
I mean, I guess I don't agree with Peter Dutton's assessment that he was the best person, to take on Bill Shorten. I think that Scott Morrison is probably a better person to take on Bill Shorten. I mean, I think that, to an extent, one of the problems they've got is, that Shorten's a bit wooden and he doesn't come over that well, and I'm not sure Peter Dutton would have outperformed him. Whereas I think, Scott Morrison can perhaps show more of a human side and show us something other than a machine politician, which is how Shorten so often appears, I think, in the media.
Our core workers are continuing the fight for their job security as strikes continue over the enterprise bargaining agreements. Employees have protested at Parliament House this week following 18 months of negotiations after the Australian Workers' Union and Alcoa failed to agree on new conditions. Unions say workers want to make sure their jobs aren't outsourced.
It's very hard on them. These guys are losing money. But they're very strong in their principles. So, as we've said all along, it's never been about money. It's always been about the fundamental wages and conditions that we've built over many, many years. And these guys are prepared to fight for them.
We'll have further details on the Alcoa strike on Western Perspective after the news. Experts are calling for more support for young West Australians leaving care after a study revealed they're not getting help despite being eligible. The Young People Leaving Care report released this week shows 65% don't receive support, while some were waiting up to 18 months. WA Greens Child Protection spokesperson Alison Zamon says it's creating a greater risk of youth homelessness and unemployment.
The reality is that for the investment that you put into these young people who are already inherently vulnerable, you will save in other areas anyway, because it is costly to deal with homelessness. It is costly to deal with mental health and alcohol and other drug issues. So it's important that we do provide this support.
A cross-party report into voluntary euthanasia is being recommended to the state government, legalising the end of life for patients suffering terminal illness. Premier Mark McGowan said we should listen to arguments presented and allow people to express their points of view.
I have been a long-term supporter of people making their own decisions about their life if they're terminally ill. And so I'm a supporter, but I'm only one vote out of many.
As an issue above politics, open community discussion highlighted in the report could see a bill brought through to state parliament as early as next year.
United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's trip to North Korea has been cancelled, with President Donald Trump tweeted saying he was not happy with the progress of denuclearization. It's understood that Mr. Pompeo had a phone conversation with South Korean Foreign Minister as both sides agreed to continue the peace efforts by negotiating with North Korea. US Senator and former Republican President candidate John McCain has passed away at the age of 81. Mr. McCain has passed away beside his wife Cindy and family members after losing his battle with brain cancer, according to a statement by his office. Tributes are pouring from both sides of politics, praising his political achievements.
And finally, this week is an end of an era for the Waffles Grand Final at Subiaco Oval, with the league moving its yearly decider to Optus Stadium. The 134-year-old league will play the season ender at a new arena in September, after 82 years at WA's home of football. The government and Waffles are encouraging families to make the occasion a day out, hosting its first public kick-to-kick on the playing surface.
The standard of footy in the Waffle is fantastic, and you know, as a spectacle and a place to come and just enjoy something like that and be a part of the very first game here, it would be a pretty cool achievement.
That's all from us this week. For all the latest happenings, you can visit our website and our Facebook page.
From Daniel, myself and the rest of the team until 8 o'clock next Sunday, a very good evening to you.
Good night.